How much of your life are you willing to sell for a lifestyle you can't actually afford? Most people in the middle class spend 40 years trading their finite hours for a currency that loses value every single day. You've been told that diversification and steady savings are the path to wealth. They aren't. They're the path to mediocrity. If you want the results of the 1%, you have to stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like a builder. The math doesn't care about your feelings or your hard work. Here's what nobody in finance wants to admit. Your current money management strategy is designed to keep you exactly where you are, dependent. I am Jensen Huang, and I didn't get here by following the rules written for the masses. I'm going to strip away the myths of retail banking and show you how we actually allocate resources to ensure we never have to trade our time for a paycheck again. This is about survival in a world that is getting more expensive by the second. If you want the truth without the sugarcoating, subscribe now. Let's look at your savings account. You feel good when you see that number grow, don't you? You think you're being responsible. You think you're building a wall between your family and the chaos of the world. I'm here to tell you that wall is made of wet cardboard. The middle class has been conditioned to worship the savings account. It's a psychological security blanket that banks use to keep you compliant while they use your money to fund their growth. While you're celebrating a 0.5% or 1% interest rate, the cost of the life you want is inflating at 7%, 10%, or 15% in the real world. Do the math. If your money is growing slower than the cost of bread, fuel, and healthcare, you aren't saving, you are losing. You are literally paying the bank for the privilege of watching your purchasing power die in their vault. The 1% does not quote-unquote save money. We haven't for a long time. We treat cash like a perishable fruit. If it sits on the counter for too long, it rots. It becomes useless. In the world of high-level finance, cash is trash unless it is in motion. When you leave $50,000 sitting in a quote-unquote high-yield savings account because you're afraid of the market or quote, waiting for the right time, you are making a choice. You are choosing a guaranteed loss of value over a calculated risk of growth. Most of you are terrified of losing 10% in a market dip, yet you are perfectly comfortable losing 100% of your time to earn money that disappears through the quote-unquote invisible tax of inflation. This is financial denial. You're afraid of the volatility of the ocean, so you stay in a harbor that is slowly drying up. Eventually, your ship will be grounded, and you'll be stuck with a pile of paper that can't buy the freedom you spent your life chasing. You have to stop viewing money as quote-unquote security. Money is not a shield. Money is a soldier. And a soldier's job is to go out, fight, and bring back more soldiers. When you tuck your money away in a savings account, you've taken your army and put them in a retirement home. They aren't working for you. They're just waiting to die. The 1% manages money by calculating the opportunity cost. Every dollar sitting idle is a dollar that could have been buying an asset, funding a business, or acquiring a skill that scales. If you have $20,000 in the bank right now that you haven't touched in 2 years, that $20,000 has failed you. Or rather, you have failed it. You've prioritized the feeling of safety over the reality of growth. This isn't about being greedy. It's about being precise. It's about understanding that the safe path you were taught in the 1980s is a death sentence in the 2020s. If you continue to hoard cash while the world prints more of it, you are participating in your own financial execution. You are working harder and harder to earn something that is worth less and less. Stop being a hoarder. Start being a deployer. If you don't change how you perceive that savings number, you're going to wake up at 65 and realize your nest egg is just a handful of empty shells. The math of your safety net is lying to you, and if you keep believing the lie, you'll be forced to work until the day you die just to stay in the same place. Most people are obsessed with budgeting. You sit at your kitchen table, looking at spreadsheets, trying to figure out how to squeeze another $50 out of your grocery bill or your Netflix subscription. You think that by restricting your life, you will eventually become wealthy. Let me be blunt. No one ever pinched their way into the 1%. Budgeting is a defensive mindset. It is the psychology of scarcity. It's focused on limiting the outflow rather than optimizing the engine. The 1% does not budget, we allocate. There is a massive psychological chasm between those two words. Budgeting is about saying no to things. Allocation is about saying yes to the right things. When I look at my capital, I don't see a pile of money to be protected from the light of day. I see a pool of resources that must be strategically placed to ensure the survival and expansion of my mission. You need to start looking at your monthly income not as spending money, but as fuel. The average person spends first, saves what's left, and invests if there's a miracle. The 1% invests first, allocates for growth second, and lives on what's left. If you aren't automating your investment the second your paycheck hits your account, you aren't serious about wealth. You're just playing house. You are prioritizing the comfort of your current self over the survival of your future self. Let's talk about the concentration to build rule. You've been told to diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, they say. That is advice for people who are already rich and want to stay that way. It is terrible advice for someone trying to climb out of the middle class. Diversification is a hedge against ignorance, but it's also a hedge against massive gains. The 1% got there by being concentrated. We found an edge, a skill, a business, a specific asset class, and we hammered it with every resource we had. Once you have built the mountain, then you can diversify to protect it. But while you're building, you need focus. Most of you are spreading your meager $1,000 a month across 12 different mutual funds, 3 crypto coins, and a savings bond. You're diversifying $12,000 a year. You're making yourself feel like a sophisticated investor, while your actual net worth moves at the speed of a glacier. You need to allocate your capital toward your greatest point of leverage. For most of you, that isn't the stock market, it's you. Your ability to earn, your skills, your specific knowledge. If you allocate $5,000 into a generic index fund, you might make 8% if the world doesn't fall apart. If you allocate that same $5,000 into a skill that doubles your salary, you've just achieved a 100% return every single year for the rest of your career. That is 1% math. Stop thinking about how much things cost and start thinking about what they produce. A $2,000 laptop is expensive to a consumer. To an engineer or a creator, it's a tool that generates $200,000. One is a budget item, the other is a capital allocation. If you can't distinguish between an expense and an investment, you will remain trapped in the middle class until the day you stop breathing. You are managing your life like a retail store manager when you should be managing it like a venture capitalist. Every dollar that leaves your hand must have a mission. If it's just going toward lifestyle maintenance without a plan for a return, you are burning your own ladder while you're still trying to climb it. If you don't learn to direct your capital toward growth, you will spend the rest of your life taking directions from someone who does. The average person is terrified of debt. You've been told it's a sin, a weight around your neck, a monster to be paid off as quickly as possible. And for most of you, that's true, because you use debt to buy things that lose value the moment you sign the contract. You use it to fund a lifestyle you haven't earned. But if you want to understand how the 1% manages money, you have to realize that we don't see debt as a burden. We see it as a weapon. There is consumer debt and there is strategic leverage. One makes you a slave, the other makes you a king. When you take out a loan for a car that depreciates or a vacation that lasts a week, you are literally stealing from your future self to pay for a temporary feeling. That is financial suicide. But when the 1% takes on debt, we are using it to buy cash-flowing assets. We use the bank's money to buy something that pays for the loan and puts profit in our pocket. Imagine you have $100,000. You can buy one property outright, or you can use that $100,000 as a down payment to control $500,000 worth of assets using the bank's capital. If those assets grow by 10%, the person who bought one property made $10,000. The person who used leverage made $50,000. That is how the gap between you and the 1% widens so fast. We aren't working 5 times harder than you, we are using 5 times more leverage than you. But leverage is a double-edged sword. If you don't have the discipline or the math to back it up, it will cut you in half. This isn't a game for the emotional or the uneducated. Now, let's talk about the silent killer, tax friction. Most of you focus on your quote-unquote gross income. You brag about making $100,000 or $200,000 a year. The 1% doesn't care about what you make. We care about what you keep. The tax code in the US is not a set of laws designed to punish you. It is a series of incentives. The government wants you to provide housing, create jobs, and produce energy. If you do those things, they give you tax breaks. The middle class works for earned income, which is the most heavily taxed form of money on the planet. You give away 25%, 30%, or 40% of your life to the government before you even see your paycheck. The 1% works for passive or portfolio income, which is taxed at a fraction of that rate or not at all. If you make $100,000 and pay $30,000 in taxes, and I make $100,000 and pay $0 because I've structured my capital into tax-advantaged assets, I'm effectively 30% wealthier than you without doing a single extra hour of work. Over 20 years, that tax friction will cost you millions of dollars. It is the difference between a comfortable retirement and a legendary legacy. You are playing a game where the rules are written in a language you haven't bothered to learn. You spend all your time complaining about the rich not paying taxes, instead of realizing that the same tax code is available to you if you stop acting like a consumer and start acting like an owner. Managing money like the 1% means minimizing friction. It means making sure that every dollar you earn isn't eroded by interest on bad debt or unnecessary tax payments. You are leaking capital through a dozen different holes in your bucket, and you're trying to fix it by pouring more water in. Fix the bucket. Stop paying for the privilege of being middle class. If you don't master the tools of leverage and the reality of taxes, you will always be the one funding the dreams of people who did. We have talked about math, taxes, and leverage, but if I gave you $1 billion right now, most of you would be broke again in 5 years. Why? Because you still have the identity of a consumer. You have been trained since birth to look at a pile of money and ask, "What can I buy?" The 1% looks at a pile of money and asks, "What can I build?" This is the time value trap. The middle class thinks that if they work 40 hours, they deserve a 40-hour reward. They want a direct, linear trade. But wealth is non-linear. The 1% is willing to work for years with zero reward to build an asset that eventually pays them while they sleep. They understand that the most valuable thing you can buy with money is your own time back. Financial freedom isn't a destination where you finally get to sit on a beach and do nothing. That is a fantasy sold to people who hate their lives. Real financial management is about building a foundation so strong that you can choose how you contribute to the world without a price tag attached to your hours. If you are 40, 50, or 60 years old and you are still worried about the cost of living, you have a structural failure in your identity. You have prioritized looking successful over being resilient. You've bought the house you can barely afford, the car that signals status, and the clothes that hide your anxiety. You've traded your freedom for a costume. The 1% is unapologetic about their priorities. We would rather own a business in a garage than a mortgage in a mansion we don't own. We value equity over ego. If you want to move from where you are to where we are, you have to accept the brutal reality. It is going to be uncomfortable. You will have to live beneath your means while your peers are showing off. You will have to study tax law while your friends are watching the game. You will have to deploy capital into the unknown while everyone else is clinging to the safety of a dying savings account. The consequences of inaction are not just a smaller bank account. The consequence is regret. It is the feeling of being 70 years old and realizing you spent your entire life as a cog in someone else's machine because you were too afraid to manage your own resources. Stop waiting for a market miracle. Stop waiting for the government to save you. They won't. You are the CEO of your own life. Start allocating like it. Build your moat, protect your time, weaponize your debt, and for heaven's sake, stop being so safe that you end up poor. The path is right there. The math is undeniable. The only thing standing in the way is your refusal to see the world as it actually is. If you found this useful, it's probably because you're tired of the fluff. You're tired of being lied to by people who want your engagement but don't care about your net worth. I'm Jensen Huang. I don't need your likes, but you need this mindset if you plan on surviving the next decade. If you're ready to stop being a consumer and start being a builder, subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment below with the one safety net you're going to stop leaning on today. Stop hoarding. Start building. I'll see you in the next one.